On Friday, March 21st, 2026, something happened that no American general believed was possible. Iran launched 2 ballistic missiles toward Diego Garcia, the most secret, most remote, and most strategically important base the United States possesses in the world, 4,000 kilometers away, crossing the Indian Ocean, almost twice the range that Iran itself declared having. The missiles didn't reach their target, but that's not what matters. What matters is what this launch just revealed about this war, and about where it can go. Let's stick to the facts. No speculation. On the morning of March 21st, Iran fired 2 intermediate-range ballistic missiles toward Diego Garcia, the joint U.S.-UK military base located in the middle of the Indian Ocean. The first missile failed in flight. It fell into the sea before hitting anything. The second was intercepted by an American destroyer, which fired an SM-3 interceptor, one of the most advanced anti-ballistic missiles in the U.S. Navy, designed to shoot down projectiles outside the atmosphere. The base was not hit. The attack was, technically, a failure. But here's the problem. The fact that Iran tried already changed everything. Diego Garcia wasn't built where it is by accident. It was placed in the middle of the Indian Ocean precisely because it was considered out of reach of any regional adversary. Until now. 3 days before the war started, on February 25, 2026, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi told NBC, "We have intentionally limited the range of our missiles to less than 2,000 kilometers. We don't want to be seen as a threat to anyone outside the region." 3 days later, the U.S. and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury. And 3 weeks after that, Iran fired missiles at 4,000 kilometers. Twice what it declared. Twice what it let the world know about. IDF spokesman Nadav Shoshani responded directly, "They expected to lie their way into becoming a force capable of terrorizing the world. We don't buy that." IDF Chief of Staff General Eyal Zamir went even further. These missiles were not intended for Israel. Their range reaches the capitals of Europe. Berlin, Paris, and Rome are all within direct threat radius. Now think about that for a second. Iran, 3 weeks into a war against the most powerful military forces on the planet, is sending a message to Europe. You're on the map too. Which missile was used? Analysts identified the projectiles as the Khorramshahr 4, also called the K-bar. And to understand why this changes everything, you need to understand exactly what this weapon is. It is 13 meters long, weighs 30 tons, carries a warhead between 1,500 and 1,800 kilograms, heavier than a full-size SUV, detonating on impact. It is launched from a mobile road platform, a truck. No fixed silo, no fixed address. It fires and disappears before anyone can respond. Its engine uses hypergolic liquid fuel, meaning the propellant and oxidizer ignite automatically on contact. No spark required. This reduces preparation time to under 15 minutes from the moment the order is given. Once in the air, it reaches Mach 16 outside the atmosphere, roughly 20,000 kilometers per hour. On re-entry, it slows to Mach 8, still 8 times the speed of sound, moving too fast for most interceptor systems to track and lock. And here is the detail that should alarm every defense planner watching this. The warhead detaches from the missile body in the final stage of flight. It then maneuvers using small thrusters, adjusting its own trajectory on the way down. This is called a maneuverable re-entry vehicle, a MARV. It is not falling, it is steering. That means traditional intercept calculations, which are based on a predictable ballistic arc, do not fully apply. The warhead changes course after release. Iran reports an accuracy margin of 30 meters at 2,000 kilometers. At twice that distance, to Diego Garcia, precision degrades. But the warhead still weighs nearly 2 tons, and the guidance system makes this even harder to stop. At the moment of re-entry, Iran's system deliberately shuts off its own electronic guidance. That's not a vulnerability, that's a feature. Because it means electronic jamming, which is one of the primary tools for disrupting incoming missiles, has nothing to lock onto during the most critical phase of the flight. Now, where did this missile come from? The Khorramshahr is the Iranian version of North Korea's Hwasong-10, which itself is a modified version of the Soviet R-27, a submarine-launched ballistic missile from the Cold War era. In the 2000s, North Korea sold approximately 19 units of the Hwasong-10 to Iran. Iran then spent 2 decades engineering it. Smaller airframe, lighter composite materials, improved fuel tanks, mid-course guidance, maneuverable warhead. The first test, in January 2017, failed. The missile exploded after 950 kilometers. By 2023, the Khorramshahr 4 was unveiled, operational, underground, ready, and officially capped at 2,000 kilometers. What happened on March 21st suggests that cap was never real. Diego Garcia is not just any base. It is a central node of American power projection, perhaps the most important one outside U.S. territory. Located in the Chagos Archipelago, in the center of the Indian Ocean, it sustains operations in the Middle East, South Asia, and East Africa simultaneously. B-2 Spirit stealth bombers have taken off from there to hit Afghanistan, Iraq, and in recent weeks, targets deep inside Iran. The base has a runway over 3,600 meters long enough for every strategic bomber in the American arsenal. It has a deep-water port capable of hosting aircraft carriers and nuclear submarines. At any given moment, between 3,000 and 5,000 military and support personnel are stationed on that island. In April 2025, satellite imagery showed 6 B-2s parked at Diego Garcia simultaneously. A concentration of stealth bombers almost never seen outside the continental United States. Attacking Diego Garcia, even without success, is saying, "We know where your bombers are, and we are trying to reach them." For American and British military planners, that single sentence changes the risk calculation of this entire campaign. To understand what this launch means, we need to see where this war stands right now. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury, strikes against Iran's nuclear and missile programs. 3 weeks later, the toll is heavy on both sides. Iran has lost more than 90% of its declared ballistic missile capability, according to American claims. But Tehran keeps firing. 10 missile salvos were recorded on Sunday, March 22nd, alone. A projectile struck an area near Dimona. For the first time in this war, Iran targeted Israel's nuclear complex. The Strait of Hormuz is effectively blocked to U.S. allied vessels. Oil prices have risen globally. The death toll, over 1,500 in Iran, more than 1,000 in Lebanon, at least 60 in Iraq, 17 in Israel, 13 American military personnel. The UAE has repelled 341 ballistic missiles, 15 cruise missiles, and 1,748 Iranian drones since the conflict began. 22 countries have signed a joint declaration on freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. Trump threatened to strike Iranian power plants if the strait is not reopened. And Iran responded, officially, that parks, tourist areas, and recreational destinations around the world will no longer be safe for its enemies. That is not propaganda. That is a formal threat of global terrorism issued by a nation-state in the middle of a war. So what does the Diego Garcia attack actually mean strategically? First, Iran is signaling it still has cards to play. After 3 weeks of the most intense bombardment it has ever faced, with 90% of its missiles supposedly destroyed, It demonstrated the ability to reach a target 4,000 kilometers away that no one believed it could reach. That is not desperation. That is deterrence. Second, the targeting intelligence may not be Iranian. Analysts point out that Iran likely does not possess the satellite capability to independently generate precise targeting data for Diego Garcia. That information may have come from Russia or China. If true, this conflict just expanded in ways that no headline is saying clearly enough. Third, American defenses worked, but narrowly. One SM-3 was fired. One missile failed on its own. Neither outcome was certain. Each SM-3 interceptor costs close to $30 million. The Khorramshahr 4 costs a fraction of that. And this is the equation Iran has mastered over 20 years of asymmetric warfare. You don't need to win. You just need to make winning expensive. Every missile Iran fires, whether it hits or not, forces the United States to expend irreplaceable high-end interceptors. The U.S. has already withdrawn THAAD batteries from South Korea to cover Middle East shortfalls. Patriot systems are being redeployed from allied nations. The stockpiles are not infinite. Iran fires cheap. America defends expensive. Multiply that across 10 salvos per day, and the math starts to matter, even if the missiles keep missing. Fourth, Europe needs to wake up. France, Germany, and the United Kingdom confirmed in a 2019 UN letter that a lighter warhead Khorramshahr variant could reach 3,000 kilometers, classifying it as an intermediate-range ballistic missile under international treaties. What just flew 4,000 kilometers changes that number entirely. Berlin, Paris, and Rome are mathematically within range of Iranian missiles today. Not in 2035, as intelligence assessments used to project. Today. The question now is not whether this war will escalate. It already is. The question is where. Iran is looking for a way out. Foreign Minister Araghchi has stated Tehran wants not a ceasefire, but a complete, comprehensive, and lasting end to the war. Trump has promised to destroy Iranian power plants if the Strait of Hormuz doesn't reopen. The UK says it is not participating in offensive operations, but authorizes the use of its bases, including Diego Garcia, for American operations. And NATO? Secretary General Mark Rutte said the alliance cannot confirm whether the projectiles that targeted Diego Garcia were Iranian ballistic missiles. In other words, nobody wants to call this what it is. Because if a missile just flew 4,000 kilometers from Iran, the doctrinal response required by Western defense frameworks is an order of magnitude different from what is happening right now. Naming it means answering it. A missile that never reached its target changed the map of this war. Not because of the damage it caused zero, but because of what it proved, that the boundaries of this conflict are not where American generals drew them. Diego Garcia was built to be untouchable. That premise is over. The SM-3 worked this time. One interceptor, one missile, narrow margin. But Iran now knows the trajectory. It knows the distance. It knows the response time. And it still has missiles. What military planners do with this information in the coming hours and days will define the next phase of this war. This is what we know right now. Verified facts. No speculation. If you made it this far, you understand why this launch matters more than any headline will ever tell you. Share it with someone who needs to understand what's happening. See you in the next one.